All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for being in the house of the Lord this morning. Man, it's going to be I think a cold and rainy day, so I'm thankful to be inside today. How about you? We're quickly approaching the Christmas season, and so I know you've been out busy this week, and man, there's all kinds of things going on. People traveling and shopping and deer season. There's just been a lot of things going on. So this morning, before I hop into the message, this is our weekend for our legacy offering. And I asked Johnson not to bring it up so that I could. And what this simply means is this weekend as we collect an offering, the goal is not a dollar amount. The goal is participation. It's a participation goal. Because when all of us do a little together, we can do a lot. And so I just want you to consider that today, all the standard ways that you can give and bless our church, and you're so faithful to do that, are just like always. But this weekend, we just want to give you an opportunity to, in the year, I know some of you are looking for places to give and places to bless, and so we're just thankful for your consideration in that. This week in Relevant Magazine, Pope Francis challenged evangelical pastors to minimize their sermon to 8 minutes. And I thought about it for 8 minutes, and then I realized that most of you need an hour of preaching. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm kidding. This morning I want you to go to the book of Daniel. And I'm not really going to read a text today. What I am going to do is give you several scriptures along the way. So if you're that kind of person that likes to follow me along, it's best probably if you just get a piece of paper and write down some of the text that I'm going to give you today. I want to give you a little bit of backstory. The story today is one that we all know, and it takes place in Babylon. Now, at this point, Babylon has taken Jerusalem, and so there's no longer a capital city. This is what ends up, being broken down. Nehemiah ends up wanting to go back and repair the walls and all of those things. And so what we would call the holy city is really in destructive mode. It doesn't look good. It's always being plundered. There's no defense there. But there are godly people that were taken captive by the Babylonians, and they are in leadership roles. And so there are several kings along the way. Nebuchadnezzar is one of those. And he's the one who threw the Hebrew boys into the furnace. Then you had Belshazzar, who our image of him, our writing of him, is he's a party guy. He loves to socialize. And one night as he's doing that, a hand writes upon the wall. And we all know the outcome of that. And then there's Darius, and Darius is the one that really is going to be our focus this morning. So you've got Darius and there's Daniel. And so Darius has some council members around him, and he listens to them. He's grateful for them. And they tell him one day, listen, we think that everyone here should just be worshiping you. And his ego checks that box. He loves the idea. And he says, let's do it. Now, the policy there is if you decide that you're not going to do that, there's going to be outcome. There's going to be some penalty to that. And they also come up with this idea that no one can pray to Yahweh. This is where Daniel comes in. Daniel's a praying guy. And Daniel is a God follower. And so Daniel says, I'm going to pray anyway. And the sentence here is that they are going to lower him into an entrapment with lions who have not been fed. And so they place him into what we have called the lion's den. And they assume that he's going to be mauled and ripped apart quickly. But as we get into the story, and I'm not going to read it today, but as you get into that, there are some angelic intervention. There is the king kind of repents of what he does and comes to him and all of those things. But when we look at chapter 10 of Daniel, an angel comes to him, and these are the words that I want us to start focusing on as I play out the message this morning. In verse 19, an angel says to him, "Do not be afraid, friend." Now, you got to remember the situation here is he's in a bad spot, one that he surely believes and everyone around him believes is going to end his life. But this angel says to him, "Don't be afraid." Peace, or the word shalom. And he says, everything is going to be all right. Take courage. All right? Take courage. Be strong. The same word is found in Joshua. When Joshua is scared about what's around the corner, he is now the new Moses. And so he gets a word in Joshua 1:9, and he says, "Haven't I commanded you? So have strength, have courage. Don't be timid. Don't be discouraged. God, your God, is with you every step you take." Now then, if we go into the book of Isaiah, he tells the prophet to share this. He says, "Tell all the fearful souls, courage, take heart. God is here, right here, on his way to put things right, to redress all wrongs. He's on his way, and he will save you." So today, I don't want to focus on necessarily the fact that Daniel became heroic, but I want us to focus on this fact, and that is every one of us, including myself, have experienced a lion's den. Now, some of you may be in that this morning. And so the lion's den for us metaphorically is a place we don't want to be. It's a place that is frightening. It's out of control. It's overwhelming. It feels like life is over. And we could go on and on and on, but this is a metaphor that is very applicable to the modern world. So we can have a den of difficulty. We can have a den of disappointment. We can have a den of despair, a den of depression, and you feel that at any moment you could be devoured by things out of your control. So what you do when you're in your lion's den matters. And I'll say, as a believer, it matters how we have perspective upon our lion's den. And so even though we're going to experience one, what you do when you are outnumbered, outmatched, and outraged is linked directly to the outcome. Let me give you a little imagery this morning. I want you to imagine just one line here, a baseline, if you will. And that baseline serves as reality. It's the everyday. It's the mundane. It's the routine. It's the getting up and going to work and get your family going and providing and meals and going home and doing your second job at home and all the things that your kids need. That's reality. Above that is another line. That line generates expectations. It holds vision. It holds dreams. It's things that we want reality to become. It's things we're hoping for. It's things we're praying about. It's things that we're putting into our hope and faith. In between the expectation and the reality is all room for disappointment because they are unmet. So you have reality here and expectations here, and in between are the places where we get disappointed. Oh, I didn't think that was going to happen that way. I didn't think this was going to play out the way it's played out. That was very hard. It was very difficult. That was unexpected. When we look in Proverbs 23, we find a scripture that we all know by heart. It is 23 and verse 7, and it says this: as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Okay? Now, there's something supernatural about this, because we also know that the mouth speaks from this same place. But as a man thinks in his heart, it's like it creates that reality. So as we're the internal dialogue, if you will, of what you and I carry every day, the things we're saying to ourselves. Now, I don't know about you, but I will tell you from my own experience, I've said some harsh things to myself. I've said some harsh things to myself, and then I've even believed it. I've said harsh things to myself, believed it, and then acted upon it. And so we say some harmful things. We say things like, I'll never accomplish that. I'll never get promoted. I'll never graduate. I'll never get over this. I'll never get married. I'll never get remarried. I'll never get respected. I'll never escape my childhood. And in his book, Don't Believe Everything You Think, Joseph Wynn says this: we have a right to believe whatever we want, but not everything we believe is right. So you have the right to say whatever you want to yourself, believe whatever you want, but that doesn't even make it right. And so there's got to be a check system there that says, now, whoa, wait a minute. And when we talk the worst to ourselves is when we're in the lion's den. We're not going to make it. This isn't going to work out. Why is God abandoning me? Why is this happening? They don't even love me. They probably never liked me. Why is all of this going on? The focus shifts in a lion's den. And the lion's den in our life brings us to an impasse. And maybe when you think of your ability to have courage, you get this image here. It's the image of a rickety bridge. And when you think of your courage, this is what it looks like. You think, man, I don't know that I want to step out onto that. When you think of your faith, it looks this way. When you think of your belief, your courage feels this way when you're in a lion's den. When you're facing an impossible circumstance, a broken circumstance, a hurtful circumstance. This is what this looks like to you. I don't know that I can get from A to B without creating more harm and more hurt if I step out into this, because I just don't have the courage. So today what I want to do is I want to talk out a few faces of courage and what those mean to us. The first thing about courage would be this: sometimes you've got to have the courage to stay when it's easier to go. All right? You got to have staying power. And so the lion's den, what it makes you want to do is cower down. It makes you want to run. And when I think about this compared to the Christmas season, you can't help but bring up some Christmas character. You got to consider Mary, a teenager, having been visited by an angel to say, you're going to have the Son of God. Now, this was not all good news for her, at least not in my mind. She's got to go tell people about this. She's got to talk to Joseph. She's got to talk to the church, her friends, people who love her, her parents. This is what's going on. She's got to lean into the fact that this is all true, or else we all know the social outcome. But she stayed. She had staying power when it would have been easier to go. Flip it. Joseph stayed. Would have been much easier to go. He had an explanation. He had a reason. But he stayed. Jesus at Gethsemane, he's praying. If there's any way that this cup can pass from me, if there's any other way that these people can be rescued, that they could be loved, then let this cup pass. But he stayed the course. He goes to the cross. He provides the sacrifice. He finishes what he started. In a very practical way, the truth is, it's our human nature to run from things rather than face them. And a root system is the most important part of anything that is growing. And RVs do not have roots. So sometimes you've got to choose. It would be much easier for me to go. It's much easier for me to flee. It's much easier for me to justify this, but I am going to stay. Why? Because I got courage. The second thing is the complete opposite. It's the courage to go when it would be easier to stay. You say, Kevin, you're playing mind games this morning. No, I'm not. I'm going to get somewhere in just a minute. There is a courage to go when it's easier to stay, and this point is all about our comfort. I would ask you to raise your hand if you like being comfortable. But there it is. There's a lot of us, we have comfort zones. We like our home a certain way. We like our office a certain way. We like our car a certain way. You like life to have a certain pace and rhythm. Why? Because it's comfortable. Some of you purposefully create margin financially in your life because that's how you prefer to live, because it's comfortable to you. You enjoy the margin. Some of you have groups of friends and you do certain things with certain groups of friends because it's comfortable. They are comfortable. Some of you like attending this church because to you it is comfortable. You enjoy it. You enjoy the process. Nothing scares you or frightens you or sets you off. It's comfortable to you. So sometimes you think you got to go, take a step when it's easier to remain comfortable. To talk this point out, I want to talk about Lot's wife for just a second. There are lessons to be learned from looking back, okay? And I know that because I've talked to you and you've talked to me. We're all gaining experience from a journey. We're gaining wisdom. We know what it was like before Christ. We know what it's been like on a journey with Christ. And so there are lessons in looking back. Learn from the past, but don't live there. There's a difference. I can reach back there and pull wisdom. I can reach back there and talk about something that now is relevant in today. But I don't want to live there. I don't want to camp out. I don't want to build a house there. What Lot's wife did is she thought about what she was giving up, not about what she was being rescued from. And this is the part that it takes courage to go when it's easier to stay, is that you're trusting what you're hearing from God, to shift, to make a move, to make a change. As a matter of fact, when Jesus is teaching in Luke chapter 17, he gives this simple instruction. He says, remember Lot's wife. He says, I want you to think about what it's like to look back and think back and be back and go back, is that you get stuck. When we're always thinking about our comfort, we can also have a tendency to get stuck and pause. So if God is leading you out of something, there is a reason. Trust Him with it. And let me get really personal. Some of you may be in an unhealthy relationship. You may be in a toxic work environment. You may have friends that are not healthy for you as a follower. Like you aren't growing spiritually due to the people around you. Rick Warren said, God will sometimes remove a person from your life for your protection. When He does it, don't run after them. I think that's great. T.D. Jakes said, if people are willing to walk out of your life, let them. So don't get stuck looking back. Don't chase after anyone and beg them to stay in your life. Sometimes people have to go. Sometimes you have to go. Sometimes you've got to take a step and be courageous. So try something new. If that's what God is speaking to you, start a new business. Start that book. Start college. Start a family. Start whatever it is that is in your heart that the Holy Spirit is speaking to you. Sometimes you've got to have the courage to go when it's easier to stay. Third, you got to have the courage to ask for help when it is easier to pretend that all is okay. We do not ask for help well. In our culture, we do more intervention than we do prevention. In almost every field. There's got to be an emergency. There's got to be something wrong. There's got to be something broken. Prevention is not attractive. And intervention is just a hassle. We got to have the courage to ask for help, to recognize something is bigger than us, whatever that may mean for you. And I will tell you this, people with secrets are dangerous people. And I say that with a lot of respect behind that. But people with secrets are dangerous. That goes all the way from Judas to modern day politics to the local church. People with secrets are dangerous people. Why? Secrets will make an honest person a liar. You can be as honest as you can be until you develop a secret. And from that point on, you will lie to cover it up, to protect your reputation, to make the people around you comfortable, to not create fear, to not ruffle feathers, to stay married. You will do whatever it takes to cover that up. And the complete honest person in you can shift into being a good liar just because you've got a secret. And many times we will not share our struggle because we're scared of what's below the surface, and we're equally scared of what others might say about that particular thing that we're going through. But being transparent empowers you. Being real will fuel freedom. Being open, listen, it will add years to your life. Here's the deal. You don't need to tell everyone your struggle, but you need to tell someone, okay? You don't have to tell everybody. You don't have to put it on Instagram, but you need to find a friend and confess your fault to them so that you can be healed. That's what the Word says. So you don't have to tell everybody. Not everybody has to know. You don't have to be the topic of gossip, but find the person that you trust and disclose to them. Why? Because it's a spiritual practice, and it will bring freedom to you. You got to have the courage to ask for help when it's much easier to pretend that everything is okay. Let me apply this really quick. These are 3 things that I think we've all got to have when we're going through the lion's den as a believer. As a believer. First, I think we've got to maintain integrity. When you're going through a hard time, we have to maintain the value of Christianity, the integrity and the character that Christianity must exude from us. Maintain the integrity that you've built during your absolute worst times. Do not blame others. Do not blame God. Just wait, be still, and know that He is there with you, and He will be there to say, take courage. When the plan has a hiccup, survive it, okay? Maintain your integrity. Because here's the good news. Every den of lions has an ending. There is a last page to the experience that you're struggling with this morning. There's a final page. So maintain your integrity and you will come out of this. 2, pray for discernment. So this is why I gave you 2 opposite things. Because some of you got to have the courage to stay when it's easier to go, and some of you got to have the courage to go when it's easier to stay. How do I know the difference, Kevin? Discernment. Pray to God. What is the best option for me? And then recognize that in your spirit. Draw your courage from that discernment. Will you stay or will you go? Will you start up or will you stall out? Scott Williams made this great quote. It almost passed me by, but I was able to grab it. He said, delayed obedience is disobedience. When I know what I'm supposed to do and I wait and I wait and I wait, he says, that's disobedience. When I know to do the right thing and I don't do it, it's disobedience. Pray for discernment and then use it. When you're in your lion's den right now this morning with something big, with a struggle, with something that's scary, God, I want to have integrity and I want to know what you want me to do. Not just when I get out of this, but while I'm going through it. What do you want me to know? And lastly, you got to be intentional with your personal archaeology, okay? As you're excavating in there and you're looking around in your heart and your spirit, you got to be intentional about that. What's going on inside of me? Why am I acting this way? Why am I talking this way? Why am I suddenly slipping back into a habit? I got to be intentional in finding out that through personal archaeology. But let me encourage you today. You may think that there's a lot wrong with you. And man, you could take Scripture and we could, what we always call Bible thumping, we could browbeat you with it. It's wrong, it's wrong, it's wrong, it's wrong, it's wrong, it's wrong. But I will tell you this, there's a lot right in you as well. We sometimes forget that after God held us in His hands and breathed into us the breath of life, and we became the image of God and filled with the breath of God, He said this, it's good. It's good. While He knew you in the womb, it's good. The Bible tells us that you are fearfully and wonderfully made. There's some good things about you. And you may have been thrown into a lion's den, or hear my heart on this, you may have volunteered for it. Either way, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. There's some good things in you. I'll talk about personal archaeology. This great psalm always comes. This was when David is just full of the Spirit. He's in a time of his life where he is repenting. And he says to God, I just love this. He says, search me, God. Know my heart. Test me. Know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me. Am I offended? Am I offending other people? And then he says, and lead me into the way everlasting. That is being intentional with personal archaeology. Search me, God. Know me. Know my anxious thoughts. Am I offended? Am I offending other people? So this morning, as I was praying this week, I just kept reflecting on, and it's so hard. When my heart goes in this direction, and because I always want the Christmas season to be just like It's a Wonderful Life, right? You want it to be snowing. You want people to love each other. You want there to be gifts. You want this to be a season where everyone is kind. that may not be the case for everybody in this room. You may be in a lion's den. Merry Christmas. You may be going through something really hard. Okay? Listen, take courage. Take courage. There's a last page to this. Okay? Take courage. Can we stand together just and have a reverent moment right here? Let's just all stand together. God, I pray over our church this morning, every wonderful family that's here, every mom, dad, student, young adult, every single person, every married person. Father, you know where we are. You know every lion's den. You know every person who's cowered in the corner trying to survive right now. So I pray for peace. And I pray for courage. That a last page is coming to this thing. If you're with your spouse today and you're going through it, you just reach over and grab them by the hand today. Lord, for every marriage that's in a lion's den, for every home that needs peace, we just pray over it. Some of you may have fought in a car on the way in. Peace to you, courage to you. Some of you are walking through some terrible diagnosis right now. Courage to you. Peace to you. God, just put your hand on our church for a second. Just be with us. Shalom. Courage. With your heads bowed today, we're about to go into a moment just reflecting on the goodness of the Lord. As we do that, I invite you to just spend a little time with the Lord. Don't rush out. There's communion to take. If you want to get out and grab communion for your family, do it. And I'll tell you this morning, the front of this church is open for prayer. You don't use that a lot, but man, I encourage you to. Kevin, if I go up there, people are going to wonder. It doesn't matter. We're a family of faith. We're supposed to be bearing. So, it's back on. We're supposed to be bearing each other's burdens. So this morning, if that's you, if you want prayer, I invite you to come forward and just kneel or stand. Let us come to you and pray with you for courage and peace. Let's worship him together in this place today.